On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers have a chance to push for 70 wins this season, but I don't think that's the right call. Plus, we will examine the 15-game winning streak that's currently ongoing. When might it end? I don't know. And I will tell you how the Boston-Oklahoma City game relates to Cleveland, all on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, of course, brought to you by FanDuel, because right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 55-10 on the season through their first 65 games. They have had a historic start to the regular season. You don't need me to tell you that. You can look at the record. You've watched the team. You know. But the fact that they are 55-10 through the first 65 games of the season tells you what? Well, hey, they've got a chance to win 70 games this year. Something that has only been done twice in NBA history. The Chicago Bulls did it back in the Michael Jordan days, the start of their second three-peat. And the Golden State Warriors did it in the 2015-2016 season. The Bulls won 72 games. The Warriors won 73 games. Now, if the Cavs can't win 73, they could win 72. If they won the rest of their games, which would mean finishing on an incredible winning streak, they would finish 72-10. They would, of course, have to win the next 17 games to do so, which I don't necessarily think is in the cards or should be in the cards, but they need to go 15-2 to finish 70 wins. 70-12 is something that I do think is possible for this team. When you look at the remaining schedule, is it a crazy thing to think that they could get there? I don't think it is. You look at who they have to play the rest of the way. There are a couple of tough games there, but they don't have another game on the schedule the rest of the season that is against a team that is in their same tier. And the only other two teams that are Boston and Oklahoma City. And I'm going to talk about the game they played on Wednesday night too, and how it relates to the Cavs, because I do think that there are some interesting things just as far as how these three teams all look, because they very clearly, I think, are in a class all to themselves. So we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. The Cavs don't have another game left against a team that is in that tier. They've got some good teams left on the schedule, like Detroit's been very good. They have to play them again. The Knicks are still a good team. They have to play those guys twice. The Pacers have been really good since the start of the year. They played them 2 more times. But this isn't something that the Cavs should be concerned about. This is not something that should be part of the goals. The Cavs had several goals entering this season, and a lot of them are goals that pertain to the postseason. And those goals are very obviously still in play. And this is a team that, whether they wanted to publicly admit it early in the season or not, winning a championship has always been the goal for this team. And now it's the only goal for this team, because when you're this good, like, you don't have years like this promised to you in the future. You never know how long this type of run is going to last. And, I don't think the Cavs are going anywhere. I think they're going to be really, really good for a long time. But I think there very clearly is something that is special about this team in particular. Like, this group might not be the same next year. And this group is very special. So you do want to take advantage of that while you have it. And the Cavs very clearly have that. That's why going for 70 wins isn't what they should do. Just by the Cavs being the Cavs, they're going to win 65, 66, probably 67 games the rest of the season, right? They would need to win 12 more games to get to 67 wins this year. That doesn't sound like it's even a tough task for them. They have 17 games left. 12-5 would be underachieving. They've lost only 10 games all year. But they don't need to be concerning themselves with the regular season results. They're going to win games because they're better than teams. They're going to win games because they're awesome. They don't need to go all out at any more points in the regular season. And I think that we have started to see a little bit of regular season fatigue, and I'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. But with the goals being postseason goals, does achieving the number 1 overall seed help the Cavs with the postseason goals? Sure, probably does. They're not going to need 70 wins to get there. Oklahoma City is not going to win 69 games this year. The Cavs are not going to need to win 70 games. I think probably 67 games get you the number 1 seed, the best record in basketball. Game 1 in the finals would be at Rocket Arena if that happens. Like, that's, I think, a fair goal, but 70 wins is not. And I do think that as we get closer, one of the things I'm very interested to find out about this team is how, and this is more about the organization. This isn't about the guys on the roster. When I say team here, I'm speaking more so about the coaching staff than anything, I guess, in the front office, maybe a little bit too. But how do they handle the end of the regular season? Because as I read off some of the teams that they have left to play, they've got 2 games against the Pacers the last weekend of the season. They've got a game in New York. That's the second night of a back-to-back. Do they care about those games? Are we going to see starters in those games? Because the other thing that the Cavs have to deal with, that they have had a little bit of practice with, is having a week off between the end of the regular season and the postseason. They will finish their season April 13th against Indiana, and then they will begin the postseason April 20th against the 8th seed. That's going to be the day they play their first playoff game. The number 1 seed always plays on Sunday. That's how it's going to go. So how do they handle that? They're not going to play. And we have seen them starting to rest guys. Like Donovan Mitchell sat out against Brooklyn with a very minor groin injury. That's not something to be concerned about. Like, if that were a playoff game on Tuesday night, Donovan Mitchell's playing. Like, he's not sitting out for what he's dealing with. They're resting Ty Jerome. We've seen them rest Evan Mobley. We've seen them rest Donovan Mitchell. I do think there are more days like that in the future for the Cavs. Now, I do think that maybe over the next 10 days or so, maybe even until the end of this month, it makes sense to ramp up the starters' minutes. And we have seen, just by virtue of some closer games lately for the Cavs, we have seen starters have to play heavier minutes. Like Darius Garland played the entire fourth quarter on Tuesday night against Brooklyn. That's not something, I don't think we've seen that from Darius all year. We may have only seen that one time from Donovan Mitchell this year. Like, we have not seen that. That used to be a regular thing for Donovan, but we've not seen that at all from Darius this year. And part of that is Darius was awesome in the fourth, and Kenny couldn't take him out when he normally does as part of his normal rotation, and the Cavs being just shorthanded, and like all of those things factor in. But they do need to start building up minutes, and you're going to get some wins by playing your starters more. But when you get into April, I think that's when it's probably going to be time for them to let off the gas a little bit and say, okay, we're here. The real season's close. We've made it. The priority is not winning 70 games. The priority is winning the NBA Finals in June. And to win the Finals in June, what the Cavs need to do is prioritize their health. They need to prioritize putting themselves in the best position possible when the postseason arrives in the middle of April. The best position possible for them is the 1 seed. They're going to be the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. There's no question about that whatsoever. They're probably going to be the 1 seed overall in the NBA. There is still a question about that, but I do think that the Cavs are probably going to be that team, and they will, in all likelihood, have the tiebreaker over Oklahoma City too. So that is what matters, is preparing for the postseason. Winning a lot of games is going to prepare them for the postseason. Chasing 70 wins and going all out before what should be a very lengthy postseason run, I don't think is a great idea. Think about why the Cavs won the finals in 2016. They won the finals because LeBron James was incredible and played 3 of the greatest basketball games that I have ever seen, games 5, 6, and 7. They also won the finals because they were the fresher team at that point. And yeah, when you get to the middle of June, everybody's exhausted because it's been a really long year for both teams that are left. But I do think during that series, you could tell that the Warriors were the more fatigued team. You could tell that they had a tougher playoff run. It's crazy that that Warriors team, which lost 9 games in the regular season, the entire regular season, lost 9 games in the postseason. It wore on them. They became fatigued. They were still great, but you can't tell me that that was the best avenue for them to win the title. That was them getting cocky and saying, we want to chase the wins record because we know we're going to win the title. I don't think chasing wins in the regular season, especially when you're not chasing the NBA record, like they should set the franchise record for wins, and that would be great, and that's worth celebrating. But the priority needs to be chasing a championship. And chasing a championship might mean winning 66 or 67 games and trying to win instead of trying to win 70 games. I think that's the best path forward for the Cavs, and that's the one I would expect them to take. We don't know what it's going to look like, but I don't think they're going to go all out to try and go 15-2 the rest of the regular season. Now, they are on a 15-game winning streak. They can make it a 16-game winning streak tomorrow in Memphis. I want to look at the streak a little bit. I want to talk about a little bit of the trends going on with the Cavs, and maybe we'll try and figure out when this streak is going to end. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. There's no waiting, no wondering, and no worries, because now this is Taxes. So get an expert now on TurboTax.com. That is TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Today's show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd my money go? Where did all that go? I thought I had more than there. Between maybe eating out a little bit, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of that cash. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan for those long-term goals that I know you have. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever now, because you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that could come along with it. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDONNBA, at monarchmoney.com. That is MONARCHMONEY.com for 50% off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said at the top of the show, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. The Cleveland Cavaliers will look to make it 16 consecutive wins on Friday night in Memphis. This is, of course, the second 15-game winning streak they've had. And I do think that this is something, while they won't admit it, and I don't think that they talk about it a ton, I think that this is something that does wear on them a little bit. It's a really difficult thing to win 15 straight games. It's been done. I think this is the 15th time or 14th time it's been done in the last decade, and the Cavs have done it twice. Like, it is a very, very rare thing to happen. To do it twice in a season is remarkable, but I also think that it does mean, especially this time of year, you're going to get opposing teams' best shots. And I think that's what we've seen. And I know that a lot of what has happened lately for the Cavs hasn't necessarily been the best basketball they've played. And I agree with that. But I also think that we've seen some of the best performances that other teams have had. Like I thought Brooklyn on Tuesday night shot lights out. I thought they played really, really well for the first 3 quarters of that game. And then the Cavs kind of turned it on in the fourth quarter, and Brooklyn could not generate offense in the fourth. I thought last Friday, Charlotte played really well. Miles Bridges was fantastic in that game. I thought Miami for 3 quarters was awesome. I thought Chicago for 3 quarters played really well against the Cavs. I thought Portland for 3 quarters played really well against the Cavs. And I think you're sensing a theme here that for 3 quarters, teams can do this. And the Cavs have been able to, in the fourth quarter, turn things on and turn it around. That is obviously not a viable strategy to keep up with forever. And this is not something I'm worried about either. I'm not worried about the slow starts. It happens. This time of year, I don't know that it's fair to say the Cavs are bored with the process, because I don't think that's true. But I think it's a difficult thing for them to get up every single game, especially against teams that are lesser than them. And I spent a good chunk of the first segment today talking about the goals of this team, right? And just like where, it should be about winning a title. It's not about winning games in March. And I think that they have an eye on the playoffs. I think that they do. And they know they're not stupid. They know they're going to be the 1 seed. They know that they're probably going to finish with the best record in basketball. They know that these games, while they are about building habits and doing things the right way, which has slipped a little bit if we're being honest here, they know that these games are not as meaningful as ones that are on the horizon in a month and 8 days from now. That's just the fact of the matter. And I think that trying to keep up a winning streak is probably a little exhausting. It's probably a little bit tiring for them, where they know they're going to get the opponent's best shot on a night when they're probably not going to be able to give their own best shot. And there is a target on their back. There's been a target on their back all season long. Maybe not all season, but certainly since the 15-game winning streak, there's been a target on their back, because they've been the team with the best record in basketball almost wire to wire. Right? That's a difficult thing to manage, because teams want to, prove themselves against you. And we've seen that a lot lately with opponents of the Cavs. And I'm not concerned that they keep digging these holes, because I just think that when they've played the good teams lately, and I get it, they had a huge hole against Boston and they dug themselves out of it. But that was 5 bad minutes. It wasn't a bad half. The Cavs played poorly for 5 minutes and then outscored Boston by 29 points in the final 42 and a half minutes of that game. So that's not necessarily concerning. The game against Milwaukee, they didn't have to dig themselves out of a hole. Like, they never trailed, I don't think, after the first quarter in that game. And they never trailed. I think their biggest deficit in that game was like 5 points, if that. Might not have even been that large. So against the good teams, quote unquote good teams, I'm not sure Milwaukee necessarily really qualifies there. But against the good teams lately, they've showed up. They haven't gotten off to these just atrocious, they haven't played bad halves of that basketball. But I do think it's interesting to see where this team is trending. So I know I normally do this early in the week, but had Spencer Davies on, just didn't necessarily have time for it with a game Sunday, a game Tuesday. So now is kind of when it's fitting in. But this season, Cavs offensive rating has actually dropped since I last did this. It's down to 121.8. Their offense has not been very good as of late. And I think part of that is they're just missing shots. Like that game against Milwaukee, I thought that they played a good enough game offensively to score 130 points. They just didn't make the number of 3-pointers that I thought they probably should have made. And then in other games, they've been shorthanded, where they didn't have Donovan Mitchell for a couple of them. They didn't have Darius Garland for a couple of them. They didn't have Evan Mobley against Chicago. They didn't have Ty Jerome for a game. Like, those things do matter when you're having this type of conversation. So that offensive rating has dropped a little bit. Still first in the NBA. There's a significant gap between first and second, which I believe is Denver. But the Cavs offensive rating is no longer the best offense of all time. It's still historically good, but it's no longer the best offense of all time. Can they get back there? I think they can. I don't know that they will, but I do think that they can. Their defensive rating is down to 110.9. They're tied for sixth as I record this. So it's Wednesday night before the games right now as I'm recording this segment. They're tied for sixth with an offensive rating of 110.9. Now, that has greatly improved. At one point, they were 12th. And to be a championship team, it's always, top 5 offense, top 5 defense. I think if you are like historically elite on one of those ends, the way the Cavs are on offense, you maybe don't need to be top 5 in the other. I think top 7, top 8 is more appropriate, and the Cavs now are in that ballpark, and that's a really good thing to see. Their net rating, of course, is 10.9, which is second, but there has been a little bit of slippage there. In the last 15 games, the Cavs are actually third offensively. Their offensive rating is 122.7. So for the winning streak, they actually have the third best offense, but they also have the third best defense. Their defensive rating in the winning streak is 109.3. Again, ranks third in the NBA in everyone's last 15 games. And what is the thing? What is the metric I told you guys I'd be very, very interested in seeing? The team's defensive rating from the time DeAndre Hunter made his debut. So DeAndre Hunter's first game as a member of the Cavs, February 10th against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Since then, the Cavs have a defensive rating of 107.8. That is the second best mark in the NBA since that date. I think it's really important. I think that is the thing. Because I know how great this offense is, and I know that the offense, while the numbers might not necessarily be that much better with DeAndre Hunter, because they're 122.4 offensive rating since then, which is statistically the greatest offense of all time. I knew the offense would improve, and I think that we're going to see it get better when everyone's healthy and they just get more time together. But defensively, the fact that they are the second best defense in the NBA in the last, at this point, more than a month, like it's been over a month and they've been the best offense or best defense in the NBA. That to me is something that's really, really important. Their net rating since DeAndre Hunter arrived is plus 14.6. It's first in the NBA. It's more than 3 points better than the second best net rating in basketball in that span. That matters. That is the things I'm going to look at February 10th, not necessarily as the turning point for this team because they were great before then. But I'm going to look at February 10th as, okay, that's when the data really matters from that point on. So those are the things that I'm looking for. And I don't know when this winning streak is going to end. It's going to end against the lesser team because the Cavs don't play teams on their level the rest of the way. But I do think it's going to end because at some point they're going to have a bad first half and they're just not going to have the juice to come back that night. And it's not going to be the end of the world if and when the streak does end like that. Now, Boston and Oklahoma City, they played against each other on Wednesday night. It's the last game this year between two of the teams in the title tier that the Cavs are in. So how have things shaken out throughout the season? And what does all of this say about the Cavs? We'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook, and March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. There's something to bet on just about every single day. All the basketball, not just NBA, but college hoops going on right now. There's so much to explore in the FanDuel app. And if you win that first $5 bet, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. It's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's going to be cutting down the nets at the end of it all. Maybe you've got your eye on a few underdogs. I know there are conference tournaments going on right now. Maybe one of those teams are like, if they can punch a ticket, maybe they can go on a run and you can make some money because of that. And FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props, all of it. Tournament games happening almost every day, like I said. So there's always something very exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So what you need to do is visit FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com today to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, you win your first $5 bet with FanDuel, $200 in bonus bets is yours. Head to FanDuel.com. Again, FanDuel.com today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. The Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Boston Celtics on Wednesday night, and I'm wearing a different shirt now than I was earlier in the podcast because I wanted to watch that game. I wanted to see what happened in that game, and I wanted to carve out some time on today's podcast to talk about it because, as I've mentioned earlier in this show, the first tier of NBA teams, I think, is 3 teams. And then I think there is a considerable gap between those top 3 teams, which are Cleveland, Oklahoma City and Boston and the rest of the league. Now, is it possible that a team outside of that group wins the title this year? Sure, it's possible. But Cleveland and Oklahoma City are both having historically good regular seasons. Boston is, I think, a great team that maybe hasn't put forth the regular season effort, and they get the benefit of the doubt because they won the title last year. And I think it's interesting to see, and this, of course, is the last time that any of the three teams in that top tier will play each other during the regular season. The next time we see a game between two teams in the top tier of the NBA will likely be the conference finals between the Cavs and the Celtics. That's just kind of, I think, the road that we're headed down. Obviously, this isn't a guarantee that that happens, but I think that's the road we're headed down. I think that the Cavs are in that tier with OKC, with Boston. And I think it's interesting to see how these teams all fared against each other, because OKC beat Boston on Wednesday night to sweep the season series. The game in Oklahoma City back in, I believe it was January. I believe they played Boston just before they played the Cavs. Yeah, they played Boston the game before they played the Cavs. And they won that game by 13 points. And that was a game that was close. And they actually held Boston to 92 points in that game. It was one of the worst offensive performances the Celtics had all year. I think that the argument should probably be more, it was one of the best defensive games that the Thunder had all year. And then 3 nights later, whatever it was, the Cavs went out and they beat OKC. They scored 129 points, which is among the most points in a game that OKC has allowed this year. And then on Wednesday night in Boston, the Thunder beat the Celtics 118-112. So it was a much closer game. And it was a game where guys on both sides were missing, but that's sort of not the point here. The point here is that I don't think you can go wrong with any of these three teams. And I know that the Celtics are going to get more respect because they won the title last year. And I know there's stuff out there about OKC not being respected and the Cavs not being respected. And in the NBA, that is something you have to go out and earn in the postseason. And, you know, the Thunder, despite being a much better regular season team last year than the Cavs were, they played one more playoff game than the Cavs did in the second round. They lost in 6 games. The Cavs lost in 5 games. And of course, that doesn't tell the entire story, but the Thunder haven't done it either. And this was a really nice win for them in Boston. The same way a couple of weeks ago when the Cavs went to Boston, it was a really nice win for them. I do think that now both of those teams believe if it comes to that, they can go into Boston and win a game. I think it's very important too, as you look at this with the Cavs. Both the Cavs and the Celtics had 6 games against the 2 other teams in the top tier. Oklahoma City didn't because they're in the Western Conference. There's not another Western Conference team in the top tier. So they only play the Cavs twice. They only play the Celtics twice. OKC went 3-1, which is obviously the best record in that group because they only played 4 games. They won 3 of them. That loss coming to the Cavs. The Celtics, they went 2-4, right? Yeah, 2-4. They went 2-4 in their 6 games. The Cavs went 3-3. And I talked about this. I don't remember if it was something I mentioned on this podcast, but I know it was something that I talked about leading into the game in Boston. And with the Cavs at that point being 2-3 against the other top opponents in the NBA, where they had beaten OKC, they had lost to OKC, they had beaten Boston, and they had lost to Boston twice. Being 3-3 in those matchups, being a 500 team against the best teams in basketball, I think is a big deal. I do think that is a big deal, more so for probably the Cavs than the Celtics, and probably more so for the Thunder than the Celtics as well. But I think if you're Boston, you still obviously believe that you're the best team in basketball, and they have rings to prove it from last year, and I get that. But I do think, or I do wonder, if the Cavs are on the road on Wednesday night, because they did fly out after the game on Tuesday, I do wonder if they were watching that game and maybe thinking to themselves, you know what? And their wins over Boston, I think, gave them enough confidence that Boston's a very beatable team. I think they are a vulnerable team. I don't think they are as maybe inevitable as they were during last season. And the Cavs are obviously on a much different level than they were last season. But I do wonder if part of them sitting there maybe watching this game on Wednesday night and thinking, you know what? That Celtics team is not better, right? Maybe they're the same, maybe it's equal, but I do think that the Cavs should probably be talked about more in terms of, maybe they should be the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. The Celtics in the last few games against these great teams, has everybody been available? No. And I get that. Kristaps Porzingis has not played in a couple of weeks because of an illness that we really don't know much about. And I understand that they are a different team. And I get that Drew Holiday also didn't play in the game against the Cavs. But you know what the Celtics did on Wednesday night? You know what they did a couple Fridays ago when the Cavs were in Boston? They wanted to win that game. They wanted to win on Wednesday night. They wanted to beat the Cavs. They wanted to send a message. I just think it's a really notable thing that Oklahoma City sent a message to Boston. I think was also a message to the rest of the NBA. And I think it matched the same thing that the Cavs did a couple of weeks ago. And I would be very surprised if the champion, again, comes out of not this group of teams. But I do think, too, after watching this game, after watching the Cavs play the Thunder twice, and one of them was a really bad game for the Cavs. It was one of the worst games they had all year. After watching them play the Celtics twice, I can sit here and talk about how I think there's a pretty sizable gap between whichever one of those three teams you want to put third and whoever is fourth in the NBA. I think there's a pretty big canyon there. But I also sit there and watch and say, you know what? I don't know which of these teams is the best. And I don't know which of these teams is the worst. And I think that's a really important thing that maybe we're learning right now. And I think it's going to make for a really exciting playoffs. And I'm very curious to keep my eye on the betting markets on FanDuel just to see exactly where the Cavs are going to be sitting in terms of their chances to win the Eastern Conference and their chances to win the NBA Finals after what happened elsewhere on Wednesday night. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else, YouTube as well. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell if you are watching the video right now. For tomorrow's episode, I'm thinking about doing a Locked On Cavs mailbag. It's been a little while since we've done one. This is the first time it feels like in a couple of weeks that the Cavs have back-to-back days off. So I figured what better time to do a Locked On Cavs mailbag than right now. So if you're watching this video right now, drop it in the comments on YouTube. Questions for me about the Cavs, can be about other things too. Or if you're listening to this via whatever podcast platform you prefer, you can always send your questions my way. I'm on Twitter at RealDCunningham. I'm on Blue Sky at Danny Cunningham. So find me there, send your questions my way, and let's have a little bit of fun tomorrow as we roll into the Cavs maybe advancing to a 16-game winning streak for the first time in franchise history. But again, thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen. Now go sign up for the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free right now at LockedOnDaily.com. That is LockedOnDaily.com, and I will talk to you tomorrow.